The joys of inhaling sea-salted air, mountain-peaked air, the resinous morning air of an old-growth forest, spring-fed, autumn-leafed, deep-wintered air, the luscious air of the tropics, the bone-dry air of the desert, the ionized air before a storm, the fresh-washed air after rain. All the joys of inhaling, drinking from the well of nature's life-pouring, life-giving air. Welcome to the latest floating poetry broadcast, and thank you for leaning in to the 101st show in my ongoing weekly series, coming to you live from the in-and-outbreathing coast of Rhode Island. This is your poet and poetorialist, Colin Goedecke, a voice for living our days more poetically, more expressively, more soulfully. Broadcast 100 was marking the making and presenting of this many shows, a theme of celebration of this achievement and much else, from our best selves and the inner and outer joys we're favored with in our daily lives, to our loving and evolving, to the majesty of the natural world and the universality of our human journey. This week being with the breath of your body, your spirit, of the natural world. From the air you drink in to the freshness and aliveness the earth exhales out. The sometimes breathtaking beauty of nature. And many marvelous life metaphors in the poetry, cultural commentary, and inquiry I've gathered for us. It was fascinating to discover, as I sourced material from many different places, how many poems of mine and others alone related to breath. So many. Well, let's begin with a slowing and softening and easing and entering a place of awareness through a meditative poem by the Vietnamese Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh, who passed away not that long ago, and I don't think will ever pass away in our molecules. Breathing in. I know I am breathing in. Breathing out. I know I am breathing out. Breathing in. I notice my in-breath has become deeper. Breathing out. I notice my out-breath has become slower. Breathing in, I calm myself. Breathing out, I feel at ease. Breathing in, I smile. Breathing out, I release. Breathing in, I dwell in the present moment. And breathing out, I feel it is a wonderful moment. Thank you, Thich Nhat Hanh. From Guy Murchie's book, The 7 Mysteries of Life, with each breath, you take into your body 10 sextillion atoms, and owing to the wind's ceaseless circulation, over a year's time you have intimate relations with oxygen molecules exhaled by every person alive, as well as by everyone who ever lived. How about that? If you heard it before, you're hearing it again. Really very, very beautiful thought. How connected we are to everything, all the molecules. Speaking of those. Well, let us, shall we, taste and drink in and savor the air of spring. Since it's upon us, it's that time again, certainly here, where I am, and elsewhere for many, and for many remembered or imagined for others. Sweet air, of country spring, now flowering trees, newly cut grass, the earth breathing out again. In Little Rock, Jake Adam York's poem. Perhaps this morning we're there, normal and soon forgotten, as news is when it's passed over breakfast, like love, something that's always cast too heavy to hold for long. We breathe it in, the bacon, the coffee. We listen to the little quavers as the local tongues, water over rock, rise and fall like stones skipping soft into the white that smoothed them. The women speak like grandmothers, softly opening their mouths, opening and drawing advice from themselves like biscuits, and offering in kindness a little more than anyone could ask, more than anyone can take. I know they're pitying. It looks like patience, the look on everyone's faces as the peddler shuffles in his blindness, black hand held open, everyone awaiting the hiss of door, the whisper in everyone's throats, breaking from patience into pleasure. Thank you, Jake Adam York, for that. Debajo de mar en calma, under the calm water. It's a poem of mine from the Yucatan coast of Mexico. Underwater lies a luminous world where strands of light waver through green glassiness, where your skin softens and glows, and all your limbs move slowly as in a dream. Below the surface, tender currents caress your body. Above, a warm breath plays on your neck and face as you sweep half-open eyes over the floating landscape. I visited Wikipedia about breath, and under society and culture, the word, quote, spirit comes from the Latin spiritus, meaning breath. Historically, breath has often been considered in terms of the concept of life force. The Hebrew Bible refers to God breathing the breath of life into clay to make Adam a living soul. It also refers to the breath of returning to God when a mortal dies. The term spirit, prana, the Polynesian mana, the Hebrew ruach, and the psyche and psychology are related to the concept of breath. And in music, some wind instrument players use a technique called circular breathing. Singers also rely on breath control. Well, if you're an instrumentalist or a singer, you know that. We're going to touch on a few of those motifs in a bit. From the Sanctuary on the spiritual healing power of the breath by Shohinagan Ungaya. Recently I went to a training, quote, wild root, where the core of the practice is sighing, the most natural way to let the breath coming out. To free the breath, to find our root note. After training as a breathwork practitioner last year, I started to incorporate more breathing into all my sessions and coupling it with shamanic healing. And after so many clients, I can say that it is the closest and very similar to plant medicine work, working on the depth of trauma in the body, releasing old stuck emotions, revealing buried memories, activating visionary spiritual experiences. Well, let me ask you about your states of breath and breathing as we move more into our program tonight. A time you were breathless with passion or great anticipation. When was that? The last time you had an incredibly and naturally deep inhale. The last time you had a long, easy exhale. Or experienced a beautiful sigh, yours or another's. What breathtaking moments have you had out in a great landscape, or seascape, or skyscape? What's your favorite kind of air to breathe? And what does breathing it conjure up when you do in thought or feeling, especially feeling? How often are you simply with your breath? when instead of controlling it, you're aware of it. And in that awareness, able to sense how you are more fully and purely, how you feel, how the world is breathing with you. As the Roman philosopher Plotinus said back in ancient time, all things depend on each other. Everything breathes together. It's a poem by Karen An Hui Lee, Theories of the Soul. Begins with a quote from Aristotle, "A true friend is one soul in two bodies." Kant says, "Transcendental idealism. In Aquinas, we exist apart from bodies, but only on Thursdays when his famous ox flies by the window. Wiser at Cologne, where Albertus Magnus, his real name, appoints Aquinas to Magister Studentium, master of students. Aquinas is petrified, but says yes. He feels his soul sailing out of his head, floating near the roof where a blue ox wings by. On Wednesday, two bodies are one soul, waking at sunrise thanks to the pineal gland of Descartes, who thinks this node in the brain is a tiny sugar cone or salted peanut, the seat of the soul, while Aristotle points to the chopping axe as a teleology, as if the axe were a living, breathing person, which it isn't. Heraclitus, air and fire, while Aquinas objects, no, not an axe, but ox. If you're a bird or soul, I am only 1 mile from the sea. If you are a soul in two bodies, life is more complex, and we must labor twice the field of sorrow after sleep, bath, and a glass, as Aquinas whispers, the things we love tell us who we are." Thank you, Karen An Hui Lee. Rilke has, Rainer Rilke has this poem, "Quiet friend who has come so far." Quiet friend who has come so far. Feel how your breathing makes more space around you. Let this darkness be a bell tower, and you the bell. As you ring, what batters you becomes your strength. Move back and forth into the change. What is it like, such intensity of pain? If the drink is bitter, turn yourself to wine. In this uncontainable night, be the mystery at the crossroads of your senses, the meaning discovered there. And if the world has ceased to hear you, say to the silent earth, I flow. To the rushing water, speak, I am. I had a very powerful experience a few years back, 4 years back, up in Midcoast, Maine, just above Lake Damariscotta, Noblesboro, Maine, staying with some lovely friends, very dear friends, in East Pond Road there. What is this presence? Close around me, in the night darkness, in the deep stillness, enfolding me like a lover with such tenderness, like a mother with such benevolence. Is it the presence of the land and water I lie above? Is it a soft, silent angel revealing its protecting wings, or my own spirit, my anima, holding me so transcendently and showing me I'm really a body inside a breathing soul? We mentioned from Wikipedia wind instruments, and I naturally thought of those as well. And those things requiring human breath to come to life. And music, other than the aeolian harp played by the wind. So Ross Gay has this small poem, Ode to the Flute. A man sings by opening his mouth. A man sings by opening his lungs, by turning himself into air. A flute can be made of a man. Nothing is explained. A flute lays on its side and prays a wind might enter it. Thank you, Ross Gay. This poem called Joyous Meeting. It was on hearing Pradeep Panjali perform that song of that name, a piece of that name, one November, 13 years ago in New York City at the at Carnegie Hall, at the Wild Recital Hall there, came this experience, and it was dark, and I just had my small notebook and a pen, and I couldn't see what I was writing, but I was just writing in the dark because I was so moved by the music. Joyous Meeting. Light shimmers and colors, possibility shimmers as mandolin meets sitar. Strings and senses embrace, entwine. Hands and hearts dance as tabla beats, as joy flows freely through the veins, through the cream and gold skin of the room, through the skin and breath and bodies in the room. And here's a poem, The Accordion Song. This was for Tony Compton, a fine-hearted English fellow, an ace accordionist that I knew back in time. The accordion, the bellows of jaunty old French and Italian fellows, conjuring up left-bank cafes, smiling with lovers and handsome roués, breezy nights under striped awnings, soft candlelights. Old-world days we imagine living in, drinking in. Days of berets and gay Parisians, of Fellini-filmed Romans and sun-skinned Sicilians. Dancing days long gone, but suddenly recalled by the sweet and carefree breathing of an old accordion song. It also goes out to my wonderful friend Richard Allen, who's spending a Mainer, but he's down south in Florida at the moment. So he's a good player of the accordion lover of that. I have to let him know that if he's not listening now, that I shared that out. Well, I'd love us to think also, dear listeners, of not only our own breath, breathing, but that of nature's creatures, the birds and the beasts alike, the wild and the domesticated, and what some of those may inspire. Well, one of them for me is the robin. It sings its song, its whole self from the center, the bright red center of its breast. Never hesitates or longs to sing out its winged soul, simply does, no matter the day or whether anyone is listening. And what of us and our life song? What of those afraid or waiting, unsure or forgetting their natural calling? Shall we, they, be like the robin and follow, take heart, and let forth without bother or further ado our own springing music, the pure song we each have to sing, can sing, into every day we have breath, into every moment we're living here in the inviting air. Well, as I went into my archives for things, I was looking around for a particular piece called The Inspiration of Breath, and this was a piece by my once upon a time wonderful voice teacher about the breathing pioneer Carl Stough, S-T-O-U-G-H. And at the opening of this piece, she said, all life begins and ends, she's quoting, all life begins and ends with the exhale, intones the breathing expert Carl Stough at the beginning of his film, Breathing, the Source of Life. A riveting documentary on his life and discoveries in the art and science of breathing. It is stunning to contemplate that statement and revelatory to begin to recognize and experience the power of exhalation. This is the gift that he gave the world. And for those of us who were fortunate enough to work with him while he was alive, Carl gave us tools to guide us through a lifetime of breathing discoveries. I can tell you, friends, that having worked with her and her incorporating some of that work, and as well as the Alexander technique, it was a phenomenal journey at the time, and really affected all kinds of parts of my life, not just the ability to sing, but to align and connect and come forth in a lot of other very powerful, clear ways in my life since, through my voice. So just a couple of excerpts in here. How can we help ourselves? One of the most powerful ways we can work with our breathing is to observe it, she writes. This is much harder than we might imagine because breathing lives in an area between consciousness and unconsciousness, and we need to learn how to connect to it. I'd like to suggest a different way, which you may find more creative and freeing. It involves using your hands to sense how your body breathes you. Let me say that one more time. It involves using your hands to sense how your body breathes you. Because it does. You may work seated or you may lie down in a semi-supine position with your knees bent and the soles of your feet on the floor. Rest your hands on the sides of your ribs if that's comfortable, or if you like, place one hand on your upper chest and one on your abdomen. Feel free to move your hands around your body as you work. This is just an exploration, and you should feel free to experiment. Make sure your hands are as tension-free as possible. This will make them more able to sense what's going on underneath them. Keep your eyes open. Next, notice with your hands that the rise and fall of breath in your body. Really let your hands do the work of noticing. Some people find it difficult to stay present, but that in itself shifts our breathing and deepens it. Don't try to do anything to change your own breathing. Just notice it. An expansion in inhalation and a release in exhalation. It's remarkable to work in this way. It is an awareness meditation you can call upon any time. When we use our hands rather than our, quote, heads to sense our breathing, we begin to lay the groundwork for deepening and strengthening our breathing. Thank you, Jean McClellan, for that. And then there's Kim Orr, O-R-R, who leads the Center for Contemplative Practice in Colorado. She's a longtime teacher of contemplative yoga therapy for a dear friend of mine, which is how I know about her, who introduced us just the other day and said I was shaping a broadcast on the breath, and Kim kindly offered some thoughts to share with you. So here they are in a clip she made, short clip, and sent me yesterday that I'd like to play for us. Let me see if I can cue that up.
Thank you, Colin, for inviting me to share some reflections on breath with your listeners. One of the beautiful things about contemplative practice is its intimate relationship with breath. And that's because your breath and your mind share qualities of the element of air. Your breath, you can't see it. Sometimes you can feel it. Sometimes you can hear it. But not always. Sometimes it's very still. And your mind, where is your mind? You can't see it. You can't touch it. You can't feel it. But you know it's there. Your mind can be very, very still, or it can be going very quickly. Just as air can be very still, you don't even know it's around you, or it can be going at 200 miles an hour in a hurricane. When our minds are disturbed, our breath is disturbed. When we're agitated, our breath becomes short or shallow or choppy. And because of this intimate relationship within the quality of air that mind and breath share, we can go the other way. Mind disturbs breath, but we can use breath to calm mind. And that's why so many contemplative practices involve slowing our breath down. When you slow your breath down, your mind begins to slow. And the longer and slower and easier and steadier breath becomes, the quieter and calmer your mind becomes. So you can use your breath to invite your mind into the calm, into the silence, and ultimately into the stillness that defines contemplative experience. And that's because of that intimate relationship between breath and contemplation.
Well, I thank Kim for that. And that same friend, very spiritual friend, sent me a message today. The Archangel Raphael. Take several deep breaths and exhale slowly to awaken your energy and release old patterns. Often during times of stress, you may unconsciously hold your breath. Yet as you know, breath is essential to oxygenating your mind, body, spirit, and very life. Write a note to yourself to breathe as a reminder of the importance of invigorating yourself with deep and steady breaths. Make trips to places where fresh air is plentiful. You'll also notice an increase in air quality when you're near water, such as the beach or a lake. Even taking a shower or bath puts you in touch with the positive ions associated with water and air. Here's a poem from Kitchell Pond, Morristown, New Jersey, early spring 2017. Plant yourself in the earth, in your breath, in the morning light, in your heart. Each day a place, a chance to break new ground, root, grow, flower. Here's a quote from Terry Tempest Williams. I take a deep breath and sidestep my fear and begin speaking from the place where beauty and bravery meet, within the chambers of a quivering heart. Thank you, Terry Tempest Williams. What else, my friends, to do with the spring air, besides breathe it in with pleasure and refreshingness? This is spring cleaning from March, a few years back. A spring of life cleaning, a natural time to air and clear out everything unneeded, everything, everyone outworn, unserving, undeserving of being held onto. To jettison the deadening thought and leaden weight of all the truly unnecessary, the clearly non-essential. To make ample, fruitful room for the most meaningful, for the must-haves. Create deep breathing room for all the must-be's. So, how will you clear your air, my friends? I'm curious. These themes of slowing and easing and relaxing, there's so many ways to go about that, and to set a stage for yourself. It could be more of a stage or less, but here's one thought. Sit back. Run yourself a bath. While it's running, pour yourself a drink. A smooth vino rosso or other aperitivo. Put on Coleman Hawkins or Russ Columbo. Have a slow dance with your partner or a slow kiss. Slip out of your clothes, into your bath. Sit back. Close your eyes. Let your breath flow, your body float. Your cares and concerns dissolve in the warm and languid waters. And let, as often as you can, the breath of nature in places you go or find yourself touch you. That's especially wonderful in the later spring or summer when you're more exposed, when you have more skin touching the air. This was a wonderful moment I had on Sea Point Beach in Kittery, Maine, one summer a few years back. Kissed every inch of my skin, kissed by ocean mist breathing, lipping over my bared body on a sea-salted shore far from everywhere but here. And within this next poem, a bow of a kind to being able to have enough breath to go into your deeper depths, life's deeper depths. It's called Depth Finder. Going down like a naked pearl diver in a greater breath into jade and sapphire waters, into an undersea of living treasures of the body, heart, soul, showed me how much more deeply I could go inside another, inside myself. how much more deeply I could dive, love, and be loved. Think of how we blow on things to cool them, sometimes if too hot, to warm them, like our hands if too cold, or to clean the lenses of our glasses, or help kindle a fire. Well, I used that metaphor, the latter one here, for a then, back in time, waning romance that I didn't want the fire of to go out. It's called Blow on the Embers. As long as there are embers, the fire is not out. Shall we blow on them? Turn our breath into great heat and light. See sparks fly wildly again from this hearth. Send flaring lines back into its heart, so all can be ablaze, aright again. As I contemplated our theme, I thought for us on the lungs and the parallels in nature and the suppliers of our life source of oxygen. And I came across greenlineprint.com talking about the lungs of the earth. It says we've often heard that rainforests are the lungs of the earth, providing us with most of our required oxygen. While it is indeed true they may produce up to a quarter of our atmospheric oxygen, most of it is consumed by the rainforests themselves by degradation of organic matter. Most of our atmospheric oxygen actually comes from the oceans, produced during photosynthesis, and all of it in the atmosphere has been produced by plants and bacteria. And because the rainforests are luscious and fast-growing, it's common to think of them as the lungs. But instead, the algae and cyanobacteria in the oceans are small but abundant, and according to various estimates, produce 50 to 80% of our atmospheric oxygen, which is why the health of the oceans is essential for sustaining mankind. Well, that was a bit of a discovery for me, maybe for you too. So, yes, and the world's forests and trees, I think they're also vital, as we're hearing, in many levels. And so the more I feel appreciation you have, I have, and reverence for them, as well as the oceans, the better off we all will be and the earth will be. I hope you agree, but let me know your thoughts. This is an old Native American elder story. It's called Lost. Stand still. The trees ahead and the bushes beside you are not lost. Wherever you are is called here, and you must treat it as a powerful stranger, must ask permission to know it and be known. The forest breathes. Listen, it answers. I have made this place around you. If you leave it, you may come back again, saying, here. No two trees are the same to raven. No two branches are the same to wren. If what a tree or a bush is lost on you, you are surely lost. Stand still. The forest knows where you are. You must let it find you. It's a poem by Ron Goedecke, Koertge, first grade. Until then, every forest had wolves in it. We thought it would be fun to wear snowshoes all the time and we could talk to water. So who is this woman with the gray breath calling out names and pointing to the little desks we will occupy for the rest of our lives? Thank you, Ron Goedecke. It's a poem of mine from Bridgehampton, one July, from my earliest memories. I had a sense of nature breathing and a desire to syncopate with it. It's a beautiful thing to do. So try that out wherever you can. This is memory of a sea-shaped youth. The ocean dazzles the eye today, sparkling as far as the horizon. The water rushes the shore, regathers itself, waits, and rushes again, each time breathing out an essence of innocence, a bouquet of childhood days at the beach. I have a longer poem here. I don't know if I think we better keep going. And I'm going to put that aside. It's called The Place Where Clouds Are Formed. It's a beautiful poem by Ofelia Zepeda. And I think I'm going to save that because I want to keep us in time, as I like to do. Dust by Danusha Ramirez. It covers everything, fine powder, the earth's gold breath falling softly on the dark wood dresser, blue ceramic bowls, picture frames on the wall. It wafts up from canyons, carried on the wind, on the wings of birds, in the rough fur of animals as they rise from the ground. Sometimes it's copper, sometimes dark as ink. In great storms it even crosses the sea. Once when my grandmother was a girl, a strong gale lifted red dust from Africa and took it thousands of miles away to the Caribbean, where people swept it from their doorsteps, kept it in small jars. Reminder of that other home. Gandhi said, "The seeker after truth should be humbler than the dust." Wherever we go, it follows. I take a damp cloth, swipe the windowsills, the lamp's taut shade, run a finger over the dining room table, and still it returns, settling in the gaps between the floorboards, gilding the edges of unread books. What could be more loyal, more lonely, and unsung? Dust. Thank you, Danusha Ramirez, from Bonfire Opera 2020. Mountain by Clifton Gashagwa. On the day I set out on the climb, grief settled in my back like a bag of marbles, my breath like clouds hanging on the low peaks of a mountain. On the day I set out, leaving nothing behind, nothing on the bed, no version of myself, just my voice through the night, the voice I use to ward off nightmares. My voice is a still life in itself, a shroud green and ultramarine deep blue, a bowl of apples and tangerines on a table. On the day I set out, the mountain is high in front of me, the unreliable god of mist and fog. I have no voice to say how high my fingers must lift, as if on a lover's upper lip, to take in the breath of how high my mountain is. White teeth behind a snowcap, numberless springs, cold like the enzymes in spit. A version of me is still asleep. The moving of a limb in sleep. Everything becomes lucid. Thank you, Clifton, for that. Mountain from Madman at Kilifi, 2014 collection. The Paperboy by Thomas R. Smith. My route lassos the outskirts, the reclusive, the elderly, the rural, the poor who clan in their tar paper islands, the old ginseng hunter Albert Harm who strings the, quote, crow's foot to dry over his wood stove. Shy eyes of fenced-in horses follow me down the rutted dirt road. At dusk I pedal past white birches, breathe the smoke of spring chimneys, my heart working uphill towards someone hungry for word from the world. I am Mercury, bearing news, my wings a single-speed maroon Schwinn bike. I sear my bright path through the twilight to the sick, the housebound, the lonely. Messages delivered, wire basket empty. I part the blue darkness toward supper, confident I've earned this day's appetite, stronger knowing I'll be needed tomorrow. Thank you, Thomas R. Smith. Moving Over Millennia is a poem I've actually refrained a few times over for different reasons over different programs, including the one on Greece. From one of my, it's a poem from one of my several memorable summers in the Aegean on the island of Kea and the Cyclades. Well, let me play it for you, for us, to original music. This is maybe a nice note in here. A poem from Greece, from the Cyclades, from the island of Kea, moving over millennia. My feet move over millennia of men's sandaled footsteps on these dromas, rising and falling with the terrain just as they rose and fell on cool marble underfoot, walking under hours of sun, over marble and dry earth scattered with acorn shells, between stone-stacked walls and olive groves, through curtains of cicadas, wind, breath, sometimes with glimpses of celadon and cerulean, oases of sea. My feet move with mindfulness over their millennia. Well, I love that piece, and I hope you did too. And I thank again the wonderful younger composer Jacob Friedman for creating that, and some other pieces that I played over different programs as well. Rachel Richardson has this poem, Canticle in the Fish's Belly. How to get to it. The heart within the corset made of whalebone and Parisian leaded satin, winter weight. I can barely breathe. Sun filters from high windows into this dark paneled room where my sister helps me step into the skirt. Our grandmother's sent-for dress, its pinprick satin buttons down my chest. We hook each hook to hold the corset flush, to anchor the bustle as she did for her quiet February wedding. Snow covering the steeple of the Seaman's Bethel. Melville, this, shipmates, is that other lesson. Fasten the locks, hold the heart within its watery chamber. When the seamstress slid the bone into the bodice and pinned each cut piece together, the satin stood upright at the sewing table. She could almost see it breathe. I am swallowed and swallowed whole. It outlasts all our vows. Thank you, Rachel Richardson. And I thought of this poem of mine around that, which was a poem for the humpback whales from the Frederick Sound, southeast Alaska, where I was on a floating wilderness journey some years back. Holding your breath. You hold your breath, have held your breath for 1,000 feet, 1,000 years down, through black and blue waters, blizzards, glaciers, barnacles, harpooners, still surviving, still returning to the surface. This Stranger, My Husband, a poem by Freya Manfred. The older we get, the stranger my husband becomes, and the less certain I am that I know him. We used to lie eye to eye, breathing together in the immensity of each moment. Lithe and starry-eyed, we could leap fences even with babies on our backs. His eyes still dream off towards something in the distance I can't see, but now he gazes more zealously and leaps into battle with a more certain voice over politics, religion, or art, and some old friends won't come to dinner. The molecules of our bodies spiral off into the stars on winds of change and chance as we welcome the unknown, the incalculable, the spirit and heart of everything we named and knew so well, and never truly named or knew, but only loved at last. Thank you, Freya Manfred. W.S. Merwin's poem, The Calling Under the Breath. Through the evening the mountains approach, over the desert sails from a windless kingdom. Silence runs through the birds, their shadows freeze. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? I have set sail on a fast mountain whose shadow is everywhere. Thank you, W.S. Merwin. A grandfather poem by Marie Thurmer. We waded into the shallows, holding his hands, then just fingertips, at his feet slowly lifted off the bottom. The land did not stop at the waterline, but simply became unreachable. His worn face bobbed above the waves, breathed in an "oh" as our words, fistfuls of shimmering minnows, scattered, lost on their way to him. The tide carried him out, then back a bit, a gradual letting go into dark waters, and we, still in the ebb, could almost mistake that "oh" for the response we wanted. On the ins, I'll remember you. On the outs, goodbye. David Whyte has this poem, The Poet is Husband. I write in a small shadowed corner in order to bear light into the world. Though the light is not my own, my darkness is no darkness to you, and nothing you should wish upon yourself, but my light shall also be your light, in which we shall see differently, but gloriously. I am not lame inside me, no matter that I drag my foot. I have run here through all my infirmities to bring you news of a battle already won. Let my last breath speak victory into the world. The race is run and shall be run again joyfully, and you shall run with me, the territory open to us like returned laughter or remembered childhood. Remember, I was here, and you were here, and together we made a world. Thank you, David Whyte, for that. Well, there were so many associations that came to mind and probably have been coming to your mind around breath beyond whatever we've already been talking about and I've been sharing with us. And sailing was certainly one of, I'm always often, my thought is that the sails are inhaling the wind like our lungs inhale the air. And this was a poem of mine called Billowing. Clouds, of course, constables, Van Goghs, and tempest-tossed waves, buildings in flames high over Dalmatians' heads, wild west-crossing steam engines sending up the white man's smoke signals, curtains on a breeze-swept terrace, the white sails of a schooner singing downwind, the imagination billowing. Voyage by Carmen Tafalla. I was the fourth ship behind Nina Pinta Santa Maria, lost at sea while watching a seagull following the wind and sunset skies while the others set their charts. I was the fourth ship, breathing in salt and flying with clouds, sailing moon breezes and star vision nights, rolling into the wave and savoring its lull while the others pointed their prows. I was the fourth ship, playfully in love with the sea, eternally entwined with the sky, forever vowed to my voyage, while the others shouted, "Land!" I also thought of zephyrs, those beautiful westerly, pale sort of, I would say, for westerly winds, and named after Zephyrus, the Greek god of the west wind, and could now, of course, refer to any light breeze. Thoreau had this quote from A Week on the Concord and Merrimack Rivers in 1849. It was a calm and beautiful day, with only a slight zephyr to ripple the surface of the water and rustle the woods on shore, and just warmth enough to prove the kindly disposition of nature to her children. The World as It Is by Carolyn Miller. No ladders, no descending angels, no voice out of the whirlwind, no rending of the veil or chariot in the sky, only water rising and falling in breathing springs and seeping up through limestone, aquifers filling and flowing over, russet stands of prairie grass and dark pupils of black-eyed Susans. Only the fixed and wandering stars, Orion rising sideways, Jupiter traversing the southwest like a great firefly, Venus trembling and faceted in the west, and the moon appearing suddenly over your shoulder, brimming and ovoid, ripe with light, lifting slowly, deliberately, wobbling slightly, while far below the faithful sea rises up and follows. Thank you, Carolyn Miller. Well, as we enter into the very last stretch of sharings for now, around our theme of the breath and breathing, Richard Vargas, Why I Feed the Birds. Once I saw my grandmother hold out her hand, cupping a small offering of seed to one of the wild sparrows that frequented the bird bath she filled with fresh water every day. She stood still, maybe stopped breathing, while the sparrow looked at her, then the seed, then back, as if he was judging her character. He jumped into her hand, began to eat. She smiled. A woman holding a small god. Thank you, Richard Vargas. Jack Cornfield has this thought, these words. While the news often features the worst of humanity, there are a billion acts of human kindness every hour of every day. Take another breath and sense this truth. William Clifcorn. My love for all things warm and breathing. I have seldom loved more than one thing at a time, yet this morning I feel myself expanding, each part of me soft and glandular, and under my skin is room enough now for the loving of many things, and all of them at once. These students especially, not only the girl in the yellow sweater, whose name, Laura Buxton, is somehow the girl herself. Laura for the coy, green, mellowing eyes, Buxton for all the rest, but also the simple girl in blue on the back row, her mouth sad beyond all reasonable inducements, and the boy with the weight problem, his teeth at work, even now on his lower lip, and the grand profusion of hair and nails and hands and legs and tongues and thighs and fingertips and wrists and throats, yes, of throats especially, throats through which passes the breath that joins the air that enters through these ancient windows, that exits, that takes with it my own breath, inside this room just now, my love for all things warm and breathing, that lifts it high to scatter it fine and enormous into the trees and the grass, into the heat beneath the earth, beneath the stone, into the boundless lust of all things bound, but gathering. Thank you, William Clifcorn. How often we forget to breathe, hold our breath and selves without realizing it. So remember to breathe. Inhale now. Exhale then. Inhale possibility. Exhale impossibility. Inhale tenderness. Exhale loneliness. Inhale freedom. Exhale boredom. Inhale you, all of you. Keep breathing. And next to last for now, my friends, an invocation, we could say. Maybe it'll inspire one of your own making and saying, give us this day. Give us this day our daily wind to fill our sails, ruffle our curtains, caress our faces. Give us this day our daily sun to light our way, warm our mornings, color our day's endings. Give us this day our daily sea to voyage on, gather our fish from, refresh our bodies in. This new day of simply living on the earth, of breathing in this earth and all its givings. Give us this day to openly, gladly receive these gifts. And last, to close our time of inquiring and contemplating and discovering, a poem for the spring equinoxes and for each of you, each of us, as we breathe through our days, our lives, alone and together. Regarding birth, first breath to last breath, what flows between is the reveling and leveling of living, the many faces and found graces of loving, the transcendental moments of great epiphanies, deep ecstasies, timeless memories, the embodiments of you becoming even now, ever new, ever free to spring. Thank you again for leaning in, floating in, and breathing in, and for your continued good words and sentiments that keep coming my way. If you'd like to express your thanks for this show or an earlier one or all of them with a donation, that'd be grand, since they help sustain my full-on creating. You can contribute by Venmo to fivefold at pipeline.com or by PayPal or directly through my site, thepoetorialist.com, and the Donate tab. Or simply by mail to me at P.O. Box 1032, Westerly, Rhode Island, 02891. Any patrons open to hosting me as a working artist, a poet in residence, on a given property for a given time, later in the spring, summer, or fall, to create a new flight of poetic art and dedicate it to you, reach out and we'll discuss the possibilities. I also welcome invitations to be a virtual artist in residence, a poetic presence for an online community. Meanwhile, you can hear all the broadcasts online, on YouTube, on the Floating Poetry playlist. I hope you'll lean in soon again. Until then, dear listeners, here's to breathing deeply, consciously, with ease and with joy. To inhaling into your lungs, into your whole body and being, the fresh, free, and life-pouring, life-filling air of nature, like the fountaining spring air here and everywhere in the world it arrives, and allowing yourself a big and beautiful sigh now and then. Goodbye for now, and good spirits.